Hey, Northwest family. Here I am in the sanctuary, sitting with empty pews. I'm missing you. But I gotta tell you, this has become so complicated and complex. I feel like it's when I'm fishing and I've just got one of those killer knots that there's no way to untangle it. This has just become a leadership knot. We have inputs coming from all directions. The president says one thing, but the governor says another, and then local officials another, and it's hard to decide what's best to do. And so I just wanted to share kind of where I'm coming from and where I think we need to lead towards. And that is, it's this idea that we could force our right to meet. We could say we're Americans and we can meet, but I worry that we would simultaneously be undermining the gospel. We could force our rights and undermine the gospel of peace. And so what I mean by that is, right now we have this view in our society that Christians are tone deaf and angry and harsh. And I think if we insisted that we can meet now, it would communicate to all of our community that we think about ourselves first, that our rights are our first priority, and that we're really not listening or concerned about our society as a whole. And so I don't want to undermine. The gospel of Jesus is that he laid down his rights. The gospel of Jesus is that he died so that we could have life. And if we insist on our rights and we can do it anyways, we undermine the fact that Jesus laid down his rights. And we want to live for and promote the gospel of peace. The gospel of peace. In Ephesians chapter 6, Paul's talking about spiritual warfare. And he's talking about putting on the armor of God. And in that, he says, as part of your equipment, he's talking about the shield of faith and the breastplate of righteousness. He says, and have on your feet shoes fitted ready with the gospel of peace. He calls it that, the gospel of peace, in Ephesians 6:15. And then Jesus, in his famous Sermon on the Mount, says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. And so we want to lead with peace. We want to be people of peace, saved by the gospel of peace, and that we're communicating that to our community. So here's the thought I want to leave with us. It's from Acts chapter 2, and it's describing when the church explodes on the scene and people are getting saved by the thousands. It's describing how they were meeting and how wonderful it was. And then it talks about the things they were doing. It says they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship and the breaking of bread. This is in Acts 2:42. It says, and awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. It was this beautiful sharing, giving church. But then look at verse 46 says, and day by day attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts. And so there was this twofold meeting. They met in big gatherings in the temple, but then they also met for small gatherings in their home. And so we see a twofold approach. Now, this is how I'm thinking of it. I remember when I was a kid, and I always felt bad for people. Maybe you're one of them, but every so often someone would have a lazy eye. You remember that? And they'd come to school and they had a patch over their eye or a patch on their glasses. And I always felt so bad, but they had a lazy eye. It wasn't working. It wasn't tracking. And so what was the solution? Cover up the good eye and force the lazy eye to work and then get on track. I feel like that's where we are. We have covered up our good eye. We have large gathering down. We know how to gather and worship and teach in a large gathering. But in the gospel, in the book of Acts, we see that they had the home meeting too. And so that's our lazy eye. So right now our good eye is covered up. Our large meeting is covered up. It's strong. We already know how to do that. But what we need to work on is our home gathering. That needs to be caught up. That needs to be strengthened. And this is the opportunity to do that. So I don't want us to focus on what we can't do. I want us to focus on growing and strengthening an area that has been weak. Small gatherings in home, that we would person to person encourage one another in the faith. It wouldn't be something we watch from a stage. It'd be something we share around a table. And so our next opportunity in phase 2 is a micro gathering. And micro means small. Could be you and one other person, or your family and one other family, or you and 2 or 3 people. Super informal. Gather on a porch, gather in lawn chairs, watch the service together, discuss the questions, encourage each other in our faith, and we can start to strengthen that small in-home gathering muscle that's been weak in our church. And so this is a great opportunity. I'm looking forward to it happening. I'm praying for you, and I encourage you to be ready to connect with other believers as soon as we move to phase 2. We want to share the gospel of peace, live the gospel of peace, and share it house to house as soon as we can. Hey, I'm looking forward to Sunday. We've got some special things planned for our online video. Make sure to tune in. Make sure to keep reading the e-newsletter as it really keeps up. And please call in and email in if we can pray for you. Hope you're having a great week. We'll talk to you soon.